The day my daughter introduced me as the help in front of her new neighbors, I understood I no longer had a place in her life. Before we begin, what country are you watching from? And just out of curiosity, what time is it for you right now? Wherever you are, we're so glad you're here. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. It was a sunny, brittle kind of morning, the kind that makes everything seem clearer, crueler. I had just come back from taking the garbage out, still in my worn cardigan and house slippers, my hands raw from washing dishes without gloves. She saw me standing at the door with a bag of recycling, smiled tightly and said, "Oh, that's just the help. She lives in the back. Just the help." She didn't even flinch when she said it. Just turned back to the couple from across the street, laughing about the HOU rules and whose hedges were too long. I stood there for a beat too long, bag clutched in my hand like a shield, while the woman, middle-aged, perfume-thick, and glossy-haired, gave me a glance that barely registered. The man didn't look at me at all. I had helped raise that child, my daughter, June, nursed her through fevers, stayed up with her during panic attacks in high school, sold my wedding ring when her college fund fell short. And now I was the help, not my mother, not Elaine, not even a friend. The rest of the day moved like soup, thick, slow, hard to breathe through. I avoided her eyes. I scrubbed the sink, folded towels, and reminded myself, you needed a place to stay, Elaine. You asked her. You came to her. At 52, with 2 suitcases and a fractured hip healing badly, I didn't have a lot of pride left. But I felt something die inside me that day. Not rage. Not yet. Just a slow, acidic sadness that settled deep in the pit of me. 5 months earlier, I'd shown up on her doorstep with exactly $126.42 in my checking account and a suitcase handle that wouldn't retract. My lease had ended. The bakery I'd managed for 9 years had shut down, COVID hangover. My ex-husband had a new wife and a no-contact order after the incident with the truck keys. And June had a house with 4 bedrooms, a toddler in daycare, and a husband I still wasn't sure about. I rang the bell with a prayer on my lips, not knowing if she'd even answer. She had. "Mom," she'd said, with just enough surprise to sting. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. Thought I'd visit, maybe stay a little while, just until I get back on my feet. She'd looked over her shoulder, the way she used to when hiding something, and then opened the door wider. Of course you can stay. Just keep it low-key with Greg, okay? He doesn't do well with unexpected." Their house was beige, beautiful, and joyless. Everything polished, minimal, a little too clean, like a hotel room nobody liked sleeping in. June had always craved that. Order, stillness. I think she got that from her father, along with the sharp tongue and taste for appearances. She put me in the spare room, the one next to the laundry, called it the second room, never your room. It had no window. The air was dry, and you could hear the hum of the dryer cycle through the wall. At first, I cooked for them. Dinners every night, groceries paid with my SNAP card until it ran out. I picked up Ellie from daycare when June was stuck at work. I folded the towels the way June likes, which meant a special trifold I never could quite master. I never complained. Not even when Greg started forgetting to say hello. It was subtle, the shift. First, June stopped asking how I slept. Then Greg started leaving his dishes in the sink, even when I was drying mine. After that, it became normal that I was just there, quiet, useful, invisible. But the moment at the door, the help, was different. That wasn't invisibility. That was erasure. I stayed up that night, staring at the ceiling, the smell of bounce dryer sheets seeping through the wall. My hands itched with the scent of bleach. I hadn't been to a hair salon in over a year. My phone screen was cracked and barely held a charge. My body ached in ways I didn't have names for anymore. What am I doing here? I asked myself. And the silence answered, waiting for scraps, hoping to be useful enough to keep. I tried to talk to her the next day, after breakfast, while she was scrolling through her emails with one hand and eating yogurt with the other. June, I said softly. Yesterday, when you said what you said about me, she didn't look up. What? To your neighbors, that I was the help. That hurt. June finally met my eyes. Mom, it's not a big deal. You're helping me. You live here. You're not paying rent. I didn't mean anything by it, but I'm your mother. She sighed, too loud. I know that, but we don't need to make everything a thing. You always do this. Twist things around like I'm trying to hurt you. I didn't twist anything, I said quietly. It surprised me, that's all. June pushed back from the table. Honestly, Mum, I don't have time for this guilt trip right now. If you want to help, help. But don't start keeping score. She left me standing by the counter with the sink still full of yesterday's wine glasses. I didn't cry. I'm past that now. I started paying closer attention instead. Greg spent hours on his phone in the garage, telling June he was working late when I knew his shift ended at 5. June had a calendar app that ran her entire life, color-coded blocks for gym, grocery, therapy, meetings, hair appointments, Ellie's playdates. She didn't look at people anymore, just screens. They let me care for their daughter, my granddaughter, as if I were a part-time nanny. And I did. I loved her. Still do. But even Ellie started calling me Miss Lane after hearing it from the daycare teacher. Not Grandma. Not once. I began to understand my role. A living convenience, a free service. I was tired. I was heartbroken. But I wasn't finished. The thing about being invisible is, after a while, you start hearing everything. June and Greg spoke more freely when I was in the room, but not in the conversation. They assumed I didn't care, or maybe that I wouldn't understand. Like I'd left my brain behind with my dignity. She's still here, Greg whispered one night, through a door left cracked open. What do you want me to do? Kick her out? She has nowhere to go. She could get a job. Something. You said it was temporary. She has a bad hip. Then she can sit at a desk somewhere. It's not my fault she didn't plan better for her life. That one landed like a body blow. I had planned. I had worked. I had raised a child alone after her father's midlife affair turned into a permanent exit. I had gone without, again and again, so she could go on every field trip and take ballet and eventually graduate from a private college. I had paid for her wedding dress in cash, and now Greg, a man who still left his dirty gym socks rolled up under the couch, was judging the whole of my life in one lazy shrug. That week, I went to the public library, not to borrow books, though I did, but to use the internet. They had computers in the back, and if you signed in early, you could get a 2-hour slot. I started applying for jobs. At first, I typed slowly, pausing to stretch my bad hip. Data entry, remote receptionist, pet sitting. I even considered overnight elder care. Ironic, I know. I didn't tell June. I didn't tell anyone. This time, I wasn't going to ask for permission to exist. After 2 weeks, I got a reply from a small catering company. Owner-operated, mostly retirement parties and small weddings. The woman, Margot, was in her early 60s, direct, with the kind of confidence that comes from building something out of nothing. She called me in to talk. You ever worked a real kitchen? I nodded. Managed one. Sweet Briar Bakery. 9 years. Before that, front counter at Kenner's Deli. She sipped her coffee. You're older than most of my girls. You okay on your feet? I shifted. Some days better than others? She studied me. You're not flashy, but I can tell you show up. That's rare. I didn't know what to say. It had been so long since someone saw me like that. I started part-time. One weekend event, then two. Margot liked me. She let me do more than chopping vegetables. I helped plan layouts, managed timelines, handled rude clients with a smile that didn't crack. I hadn't felt useful in a long time. I didn't realize how much I needed it. By the third month, I had my own small schedule. 3 events a week, more during wedding season. Margot even offered to let me shadow her on quotes and budget prep. You ever thought of doing your own gigs? She asked one night, wiping down a steel counter. You've got the eye, and you don't scare easy. I smiled. I thought I was too old to start anything. She laughed, loud and full. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You've got patience, taste, calm. The girls with the TikToks don't have that. I didn't tell June, but I started setting money aside, a little each week, quietly, into a separate account. I didn't want her to know I was working. I was afraid she'd use it to justify cutting something off, food, laundry, even Ellie. I told her I was volunteering at a church pantry. She never asked questions. She was too busy. Greg was too distant. They were both too self-involved. And then came the breaking point. It was a Thursday. Ellie had a fever. Daycare wouldn't take her. June had a client pitch. Greg said he couldn't miss a call. I stayed home with her, of course, rubbed her back, sang her lullabies from when June was small. Ellie fell asleep on my chest. That afternoon, I overheard them arguing behind the bathroom door. I don't like her being alone with Ellie so much, Greg said. Why not? June asked. She's getting attached. You can see it. It's weird. She's her grandmother. Exactly. And that makes boundaries messy. I want her gone by the fall. I froze. I'm serious, Greg continued. This isn't sustainable. What if she falls again? What if she sues us or something? She's living here rent-free. I'll talk to her. You've been saying that for months. There was silence, then water running. I didn't confront them. I didn't pack my bags. I didn't cry. I started taking notes. How many hours I'd watched Ellie. What days I'd cooked. What groceries I'd bought. The time I spent cleaning, driving, sorting their mail. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was documentation. A quiet ledger of my unpaid labor. I also started applying for my own business license. A small catering sole proprietorship. Just me. I used Margot's kitchen when it was available and borrowed her tables and linens for a discounted rate. She believed in me. You're not starting late, she told me. You're starting free. There's a difference. I made a business card. Nothing fancy. Just Elaine Morris events. Small plates, small spaces, big heart. The final straw came in July. June told me, over coffee, that they were planning to turn the second room into a home gym. She asked if I could figure out another plan by September. I nodded, slowly. Of course. She looked relieved, like I'd just given her permission to breathe. And in a way, I had, but it wasn't the kind she expected, because I already had my own plan. I moved out on a Tuesday morning in early September, without ceremony. Greg had already left for work, or wherever he went that called itself work these days. June was upstairs wrangling Ellie into her polka dot leggings, unaware that this would be the last time I'd boil the kettle in her kitchen. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't write a note. I packed my things, while the dryer rumbled a few feet from my head, a familiar hum I would not miss. That room had started to feel like a waiting room in a train station I never meant to arrive in. I took one last look around the second room. It still smelled like fabric softener and resignation. The photo of Ellie I'd printed and framed myself. I left it behind. A small parting gift. Or maybe a mirror. I walked the suitcase, same old one with the jammed handle, to the sidewalk, my hip aching. Margot's borrowed car waited 2 blocks down. I didn't look back. June didn't call that day. Or the next. Maybe she noticed. Maybe she didn't. Or maybe she didn't know how to reach for someone she'd taught herself to ignore. But by the end of that week, everything had started to change. For both of us. Margot took me in above her garage. No questions. It was a modest space, but it smelled clean and had light that felt honest. Morning sun poured in through old curtains with little lemons printed on them. "You okay here?" she asked. "I feel real," I said. That night I cried. Full body, silent sobs that came from somewhere deeper than sadness. They were the kind of tears that only come when grief turns into relief. And then I went to work. I catered 2 events that first week. One, a garden brunch for a retiring art teacher. The other, a surprise 60th for a woman who cried over homemade apricot crostini. By month's end, I'd built a word-of-mouth buzz. The quiet kind. My kind. I called it Elaine Morris Events. Understated, reliable, full of grace. Margot lent me kitchen space when I needed it. I borrowed her van on weekends. And I started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. It was nearly 6 weeks later when June finally reached out. She texted first. "Hi, are you okay?" I didn't respond. 2 days later. "Can we talk? Please, I think I owe you that." I waited another day, then typed back. "I'm working a double. But Saturday, 3 p.m., Café Minuet, if you're serious." She was already waiting when I arrived, seated at the corner table, hair pulled into a low bun, the skin under her eyes dark and thinner than I remembered. She stood when she saw me, as if remembering at the last second that she should. "Hi," she said, voice tight. I nodded, sat, let her sit in the discomfort. The silence grew full and sharp. Then she said, "You really left." "I did. I didn't think you would. I always said I would leave if it got too hard. You just never thought I meant it." She nodded slowly. I thought you'd always need me." "No," I said. "I needed safety. You offered shelter. Not the same thing." She looked down into her untouched tea. "I was so wrong, Mom." I let her sit in it. She needed to say it without rescue. Then she finally added, "Greg's gone. For good this time." I didn't feign surprise. He wanted me to choose between him and everything else, she said. Told me I had to stop coddling everyone. Told me I was weak. Said I let people walk all over me, including you. My eyebrows lifted. "Including me? He never saw you as a person," she whispered. "Just a task I forgot to finish." She wiped her eye, angry with herself. "I let him speak about you like that. I agreed sometimes, just to keep the peace. I didn't defend you. I didn't protect you. And now?" I asked. "Now?" Her voice broke. "Now I hear myself saying, just the help in my head every night, and wanting to scratch it off my skin." There it was. The burn, the rawness I hadn't needed, but had waited for all the same. "I've been replaying that day," she said, "over and over. What I said, how you stood there, the bag in your hand. You looked like someone whose name had been stolen." I blinked, and something loosened behind my ribs. She continued. "Ellie asked where you went. I told her you're working now, doing events. She said, 'Grandma is good at making everything pretty.' She remembers, Mom. That almost did me in. She misses you," June said. "And I don't want to teach her to forget the people who love her. I don't want her to learn erasure from me." I sat still, feeling the weight shift. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "But if you'd let Ellie visit, if you'd let me earn back one piece of this." "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "But I'm not here to save you either." She hesitated, then added, I'm out of savings. I've applied for 9 jobs this week. Receptionist, admin assistant, even one at a bakery downtown. I don't know who I am, without all the things I used to pretend made me better than you. Her eyes flicked up. I know I have no right to ask, but if you needed someone to help, at your events or anything, really, I'd show up. I'd work hard. I let that hang in the air. Let her feel it. Then I said gently, well, I do need some help. I'm expanding. It's small, but I'm growing. There's always prep, setup, dishes, loading the van. I could use someone dependable, quiet, focused. Her face changed, part confusion, part emotion rising from somewhere deep. You're offering me a job? I nodded. I could use the help. Her mouth opened just slightly. She heard it, all of it, the words, the memory, the symmetry, but I wasn't cruel. My tone was soft, almost kind. You'd start small, I said. No promises, but it's work. And it's honest. June's eyes filled, not from insult, but from understanding. I'd be honored, she whispered. Really? She nodded, tears catching in the corner of her lashes. I'll send you photos of Ellie's drawings, she said. She's into suns now. They all have eyelashes for some reason. I laughed, a real laugh. That winter, I catered a solstice supper in a refurbished greenhouse. Guests toasted with spiced cider under strings of golden lights. I served roasted pear salad and mushroom tartlets and lemon tarts that made people close their eyes. June came. Not as a client, just a guest. She brought Ellie, who wore a red scarf I'd knitted last Christmas, and called me Grandma without prompting. June stayed in the background. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to insert herself. She just watched me work, watched people greet me like I mattered, watched me move with calm and presence, watched her mother stand in full ownership of her life. Afterward, she hugged me, not with guilt, with reverence. I still live in Margot's garage flat, though I've nearly saved enough for my own place. A small garden apartment, maybe one with lavender in the window. Elaine Morris Events is booked out 3 months in advance. I only take jobs that feed my soul. My hip still aches, but my heart doesn't. And sometimes, when the phone rings and it's June asking if Ellie can come for the afternoon, I say yes, because I choose it. Because it's earned now, not owed. I'm no one's second room anymore. I live in the whole house of my life.